If you've been a fan of the channel for a while, you know I absolutely love Arc Warlock. Unfortunately, with Prismatics release, it kind of fell under the radar a little bit, but with some of the brand new artifact perks that came out with Act 3, it is a very strong subclass again. I have had a ton of fun with this build, and it's going to allow you to have unlimited grenades, melee class ability, and even supers. On top of all that, you will pretty much never have to reload your weapon, and it is extremely easy to play. Alright, starting off, I want to take a look at the subclass first, because this is going to play heavily into everything else that's going to be in our kit. Our first aspect is going to be Arc Soul. So cast your rift to create an Arc Soul that fires the targets in front of you. Allies can pass through the rift to get an Arc Soul. Your rift charges faster when allies are near, while Amplify, your Arc Souls are supercharged and gain increased fire rate. So the Arc Soul that we've known to come in love with our Getaway Artist build is also going to be on this build as well. The only difference is you have to use a rift to get it. The cool part of this is that your teammates can also get the Arc Soul. Unfortunately, theirs won't be supercharged, but yours will permanently be supercharged because you're always going to be amplified. Obviously, Arc Soul is great for doing additional damage. It's also just great for helping out with ad clear as well. And then on top of that, if the Arc Soul wasn't enough, your rift is also just going to recharge faster when you're near your teammates. So this just means you can have more healing rifts for your survivability. So for our next aspect, it's going to be Electrostatic Mines. Defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an Ionic Trace. Collecting an Ionic Trace makes you amplified. So this is going to be the most crucial part of this build, because you're going to be able to make a ton of Ionic Traces, not only from this aspect, but from other parts of our build as well. We'll get into those a little bit later, but also every single time you pick up that Ionic Trace, you will be amplified. You're going to want to be amplified permanently with this build, not only because you'll have a supercharged Arc Soul, but also other things in the build can also play into it. As a takeaway, just know with this aspect, you're going to be able to make a ton of Ionic Traces, and you're always going to be amplified. So just keep that in mind once we go over some other stuff later down the line. Now for the fragments, Spark of Resistance is pretty much always a must. You're going to hit damage reduction when you're surrounded. On top of that, Spark of Shock, so your arc grenades can jolt targets. This is going to be great because Jolt is obviously very good for ad clear, but on top of that, this can also proc Electrostatic Mine to make those Ionic Traces. And the grenade of choice is Pulse Grenade. If you want to run something like Storm Grenades, you can too. Pulse Grenade just lasts on the field for a while. You can keep jolting enemies over and over. It's super nice. Now we're also going to be taking Spark of Ion, so whenever we defeat a jolted target, we can make an Ionic Trace. This will actually stack with Electrostatic Mine, so you're going to be getting even more Ionic Traces, and you're going to be able to jolt a lot of targets with your grenade and even things like our weapons. Now next up is going to be Spark of Discharge, so our arc weapon Final Blows has a chance to create an Ionic Trace, and again this will stack with Ions and Electrostatic Mine, so you're making even more Ionic Traces, which means you're always going to be amplified, and this will play into our exotics as well. Now for the super, run Chaos Reach, one, because it's just better than Storm Trance, but it's also going to play into that exotic we just mentioned. And then I also like to take Chain Lightning from a melee. If you want to take Ball Lightning, you absolutely can. I just prefer Chain Lightning because it can apply Jolt, which can stun overload champions. And then while you're amplified, it can also create those additional chains. Again, you're always going to be amplified. And then for the Rift, as I mentioned, I do like to take Healing Rift just for survivability. If you want to run Empowering, you can, but Healing Rift is probably going to be better. You can just heal your teammates, they're going to get Arc Souls, and obviously those benefits can also apply to you as well. Now for our exotic, we're going to be running Geomax Stabilizers. This has the exotic perk Close Enough. Damaging targets with Chaos Reach extends its duration. Collecting Ionic Traces grants you energy for Chaos Reach. Getting that extended duration is extremely nice for doing extra damage to a boss or even things like champions. Chaos Reach is honestly not the greatest super in the game, but if you do just use it to clear out a room of ads or just kill a tankier target, it can perform very well. You want to use it almost just like one of your other abilities, because you're going to get it back extremely fast due to the other part of the exotic where if you collect Ionic Traces, you'll get some energy. You're going to be making a ton of Ionic Traces with this build, as we already went over with the subclass, and every single one of those you pick up not only is going to be giving you energy for all your abilities, but with this now you will get super energy. As you can see for some of these clips, you get your super back extremely quick, so you want to spam these over and over. And because of that reason, like I was saying earlier, you can kind of just view your super as a very beefy ability that you can just spam whenever you want to. Now before we get into the weapons, I do actually want to touch up on the artifact first, because this will play a massive part as well. First off, we're going to have our new perk Shock and Awe. So when you have an Arc or Prismatic subclass equipped, Arc Final Blows while you are amplified summon a burst of lightning that damages and jolts targets. Obviously we're going to be amplified all the time with this build, so we're always going to be proccing this. It does have a small cooldown, but it is very strong. You're constantly jolting enemies, constantly doing damage just whenever you're getting kills. And this can proc with literally anything. It could be your arc soul, your grenade, your weapon, anything of choice. Now we're also going to be running shield crush, so whenever we're amplified or radiant, we're going to get increased grenade recharge rate and damage. This is great again because we're always going to be amplified, so now grenade can do more damage alongside also jolting enemies. Then we're also going to be running galvanic armor, so whenever we're amplified, we're going to get damage reduction. This is going to be great. Again, we're going to be amplified all the time. And then for the final one that's actually going to play into our subclass is going to be elemental siphon. So rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super creates an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. So since we are going to be running an arc weapon, that will match with our arc super, so we're going to make even more ionic traces on top of everything else that we've already went over. Again, all these ionic traces will benefit you with giving you ability energy and giving you extra super energy with geomax stabilizers, and they're going to be a ton of ionic traces. But now let's get into the weapon portion of the video. What should you actually run with this build? Now, if I'm being honest, literally any arc weapon will work. If you just want to run a weapon with volt shot, that will do extremely well. Just a plain arc weapon will also do well. But the centrifuge, a weapon I notoriously have not liked, is actually very, very strong now. Now, the reason behind this is going to be because we have 2 new artifact perks that play into auto rifles. I guess 3 technically if you count overload auto rifle, which is nice, but we're gonna have sustained fire, so continuously damaging combatants with an auto rifle grants you damage resistance. But then on top of that, we also are going to have targeting autoloader. So while you have an auto rifle equipped, defeating combatants reloads your equipped weapon and temporarily increases weapon damage, awards bonus progress when defeating final blows while surrounded. So now essentially you don't really ever have to reload your auto rifle at all with this, and you get increased damage, so it kind of acts like rampage and subsistence in a way, just as a artifact perk. And then on top of that, you also will get damage resistance if you are shooting an enemy long enough. That can stack with things like galvanic armor, and you can also proc overload with the overload auto rifle if that's something you care about. A thing to note, because it's kind of neat, if you do have overload on an enemy, they will do reduced damage, and then obviously doing a lot of damage with your auto rifle will actually give you resistance, so you can basically just become unkillable with all this stacked together if you are shooting a tankier target with your auto. Now, the reason I do like to run centrifuge with this is because of the way the gun works. Now, to start off, the main focal point of this gun is to never reload it, so obviously having an artifact perk that lets you never have to reload your auto rifles is going to make this very strong. The downside is that if you reload it, it loses its power, so now you never have to reload it. If you sprint, it will actually reload the weapon a little bit over time, which is nice paired with the artifact perk. And then on top of that, we have overcharge capacitor. Sprinting, sliding, and firing this weapon builds a temporary electrostatic charge, increasing range and reload speed. Final blows with high charge cause explosions, and maximum charge explosions blind targets. So with this weapon, you're going to have a bar that you want to keep filled up at all times, so you get those additional benefits. If you ever reload the weapon, you will lose all progress on this bar. So with the ability of having an artifact perk that would just load ammo back into the magazine and being able to sprint to reload the weapon, it is very, very strong and easy to keep that bar up. On top of that, as it mentioned, if you do have the bar filled up all the way, every single kill you get will make a blinding explosion. The blinding will pair with everything else in the build, specifically with things like electrostatic mines. So when you defeat a blinded target, you will make an ionic trace. But on top of that as well, you're also going to be pairing this with shock and awe, so you're creating a jolting explosion and a blinding explosion at the same time. You pretty much could have an entire room blinded and jolted at all times with this weapon, and it is extremely fun to use. Now, the other benefit of this gun is its catalyst, and I would highly recommend getting it, and that's because while you're amplified, this weapon will just gradually gain overcharge, so your bar is just going to constantly fill up. So if you're ever amplified, you essentially will never have the bar go down unless you do reload, but then it immediately starts charging again. But you never have to reload. Your bar is always going to be recharging, so it's always going to be filled. So you're constantly causing blinding explosions all the time, which can then pair with shock and awe to even cause jolting explosions, and you're getting damage resistance as well if that wasn't enough. Centrifuge is a literal blast. It is so much fun with these new artifact perks, and it is went from a weapon I have literally never used to now actually being one of my favorite weapons in the game right now. But then jumping over to stats, I would highly recommend 100 resilience to get your 30% damage reduction. Also 100 discipline so you can get your grenade back as fast as possible. You want your grenade spammed a lot with this build because it can apply jolt. On top of that, you also will be doing increased damage with shield crush. So grenades are going to be very, very strong with this build. For the rest of your stats, I would just go into recovery so you can spam your rift as much as possible, because this is going to be a strong form of your survivability, and you can also grant arc souls. For anything else, else, I would just go with strength. You don't really need intellect because the Onyx traces are going to constantly refill your super at all times with Geomag. Now for our armor mods, this is what I'm running if you like to copy it down, but as a more in-depth look, I do like to take a harmonic siphon so I can make orbs of power on rapid arc weapon kills. So now my centrifuge can just make orbs, which is going to be very, very nice for this build. Next up is going to be Ashes to Assets. So whenever I get grenade kills, I get more super energy, and then Dynamo, whenever I use my class ability near enemies, I get more super energy. We're obviously going to be playing heavy into our super since we are running Geomags. Ashes to Assets is going to give you just an absurd amount of super, and since you can spam both of these literally all the time, it's just that extra cherry on top. Now for our arms, I do like to run a momentum transfer and a bolstering detonation. This just makes it so whenever I deal grenade damage, I'm getting melee and class ability energy back. Again, we can spam grenades all the time, and to do that even further, we're going to be running a grenade kickstart. So if we throw our grenade, we get grenade energy back. This is based on armor charge, so the more armor charge we have, the more we get back, and we can get armor charge by picking up the orbs that we make with harmonic siphon. Now for your chest piece, always go with resistant mods. This is just always the best in slot in any scenario. Just swap this out whatever content you're going into. And then for our boots, I do like to run a recuperation so we get health every time we pick up an orb, and then I also like to run a better already so our health starts to regenerate. So with these two paired together, you basically just pick an orb up, you get a big chunk of health, and your health will start to regenerate. Since you don't have that strong of survivability with this build other than your healing rift, this comes into play extremely well. The next up is absolution. So whenever we pick an orb up, we will get energy for all of our abilities. This is great because they essentially just work like mini Onyx traces. You're getting ability energy for everything, you're spamming your abilities all the time, and since it's an orb, it will also even grant super energy just like Onyx traces will with the Geomags. Now finally for our class item, I do like to run a bomber, so whenever I use my class ability, I get grenade cooldown. This is great. Again, you can spam your class ability all the time, so you just get some extra grenade energy. On top of that, powerful attraction, so you can pick up orbs that are around you when you use your class ability. Since you can spam it all the time, if there's a orb that you really can't pick up, this will just pick it up for you. And this again will play into all of our other armor mods that we've already went over. And then finally, I do like to run a Reaper, so whenever we use our class ability, the next time we get a kill, we'll make an orb of power. This is great if you ever just need an orb for survivability. You can throw the healing rift down to heal up, kill an enemy, and then go pick the orb up, and you're pretty much just going to be healed to full. If you want to run anything else, you absolutely can. Something like proximity ward will also be decent, but I just like to make orbs just again to further play into some ability energy and just for survivability. But with all these paired together, you're going to be getting a ton of super energy, and then pairing all that with the Onyx traces you get with Geomags, it is honestly just ridiculous. And then for the most important part of the build, this is the Transmog I am running if you would like to copy it down. I obviously went for a very electric theme. I took advantage of some of the Geomag ornaments, some of the Arc 3.0 armor set that came out a while back now at this point, which is just crazy, but I think it turned out looking absolutely amazing. Again, if you want to make your Warlock look like this, definitely be sure to copy it down. Anyways though, that is going to do it all for me. Let me know what you all think about this build in the comments below. I was very excited when I saw Shock and Awe coming back, and also the potential with centrifuge, some of the artifact perks, and it has honestly just blew my mind at how crazy good it is. It's definitely one I would recommend you all give a try, and if you all enjoy, definitely be on the lookout because I'm going to be posting a Arc Hunter build and an Arc Titan build here soon. I wanted to get 3 Arc builds out since the new act seems kind of Arc heavy, and I knew for the Warlock I had to throw it back with the old Geomags. Anyways though, I wish you all the best of luck in putting this build together for yourself. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Peace.